What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast. We talk about the latest and greatest of cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight the movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shannon Tynes.
What's up? What's up?
What's going on? So, welcome to the discussion episode of the podcast. So, Monday and Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, Thursdays Ask a CISO. This week should be Roger White, professor, mentor, and then just an all-around great guy and mentor. Definitely check that one out. He is a security solutions architect. There you go. So great episode. Definitely was great catching up with him. It's been about 4 years in the making, so it was great to have him on. And I hope to have him on the show maybe next week is what we're trying to aim for, and bring him on the other side. So he can interact with the entire team. And then the next Ask CSSP will be with Miguel Clark, so another friend of the show. We've had him on in the past with Aisha Hollins. So talk to him. He is a retired supervisory special agent for the FBI, and now he is a GRC evangelist for Armor. So great conversation with him as well. And then Fridays, everything else, movies, books, games, all that good stuff. But without further ado, I give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. So this article comes from darkreading.com, right? Written by Nate Nelson. And the title of this one is A CISO's Guide to Avoiding Jail After a Breach, right? So what's starting to happen, right, is the government is starting to scrutinize these CISOs, right? Because whenever they have a major breach, there has to be a fall guy usually, is the way that this works out, right? So the CISOs are kind of taking the brunt of this. And what they discuss in this article, and what's kind of appealing to me with this is that I've thought about this before, right? So as with anything, somebody has to always take a fall when something major happens, right? Like sometimes it's the CEO, sometimes they try to find that scapegoat farther down the line. And what they talk about here is that the CISOs are the ones that are coming under government scrutiny, right? So when this starts to happen, what you start having is you have people that don't want to occupy these positions, right? Like you have people that are like, all right, well, if I'm going to be a CISO, if something should go wrong, no matter what I try to do, there's no recourse for me because I'm going to end up being the fall guy or gal. Right. And so what they talk about in this article is the way to get around this is communication, right? Is having open communication and collaboration with other members inside the company, right? Or wherever you are as a CISO, which kind of makes sense, right? Now, what I will tell you, something I learned in the military is document, right? Anything you're going to do, put it in print. Right? Because what can happen is that if it's your word against theirs, right? The CEO, like if you're in the C-suite as a CISO, if you're talking to the C-suite, right? The CEO, COO, CFO, when you're talking to these people, if you're just having a meeting, they could all be like, no, it was just this one guy or gal, right? And this is the fear. This is what's happening is that people are getting prosecuted by the government for different breaches and things of that nature that are happening, and they have nothing to go back on. They can't go back and say, well, I talked to them about this, right? Whether they didn't document correctly or there was no meeting minutes or anything like that to turn to. And the way to go, again, like I mentioned before, the way to kind of combat this is to have that open communication, right? And that collaboration and to actually document it, right? So that it could be like, hey, we all as a team made this decision that we thought this would be the route to take, right? Because almost always when it comes to cybersecurity leaks, they always go to the head of the cybersecurity team and say, hey, you're at fault here, right? No matter what they may have said, right? So like even me as a contractor now, like I can only make recommendations, right, to my team, right? Because I work for the government. Like the government ultimately gets to make the decision, right? Now, there's guidance out there that I have to go by, right? You have your NIST, you have your different guidances that we use based on the environments that we work in. But the customer, right, can always be like, no, we don't want to go that route. This is what we want to do. And I just make my recommendation. I think that's bad because of this, that, and the third. And again, documenting that is where that usually has to come off, right? Because usually, like if someone comes up to me and has a conversation, I almost always follow it up with an email saying, per our previous discussion, or per our previous conversation, as we discussed on this date or whatever, you got to get it put in print. Because I've been in situations before in my military career where I've just allowed for people that I thought were honest, to go about doing things the right way, and it just didn't happen that way, right? Like it ends up being more work for me and my team on the long end, on the far end, right? All because I didn't get it in print. So that's why when it comes to how to protect yourself, collaboration, communication, documentation is what they talk about here, and I'm all for it. Like that's the way to get it done, because especially up in the C-suite, right? Like they got these sweet deals, these sweet salaries and stock options and things like that of that nature that they aren't trying to give up, right? So they'll point down to the I don't even want to say the cyber department. I'm going to say the IT department in general, because we've seen these companies that are just dropping them all together, right? They're just like, we don't need that. You know what I mean? We can go away from that. All they're doing is telling us what not to do. Yes, to keep you safe, right? It's to keep that public trust that we talk about so much that people like to keep, right? So people can keep buying your stocks and making you as profitable as possible. But Ryan, what's your thoughts on this, man?
No, I think you absolutely nailed it, and you do have a lot of experience within this particular form being a vulnerability guy, right? In the military, so HBSS and all that good stuff. Like you guys are as close to the military's right. So vulnerabilities, system administration,
Vulnerability
virtualization.
management, yeah,
Yeah, like
pretty much.
you guys are as close to being the active, I guess, like maybe CISOs for the enterprise as anyone could be within the Department of Defense. Because I'm a network guy by trade, right? So cyber transport. So we interfaced with your team when it came to STIGs and uh, scanning our switches, routers, and all the above, and then coming into compliance. You guys were the entire enterprise, so from the end user all the way to the authorization to operate ATO and RMF packages. So you guys did the full gamut. So when I tell people who are leaving the Air Force who want to go to cyber, I'm like, yeah, you guys are like, you're doing all of it. Like, but with that comes awareness. That is, I think, the crux. That is the issue of why they're pointing the finger at CISOs so heavily. It's like, well, you knew better, but you don't have the teeth in the civilian sector. So, like in the military, it's a matter of either you are approved to operate or we shut you down. There's no money involved. There's no stakeholders per se. There is mission, obviously, so we can't shut you down if you're a well, no, they don't even shut down a nuke base. Like they don't care. The military is very black and white because there is no money to be transpired. Like the only thing is like, do we have an enemy actively engaged? Enemy active engagement, right? Are the troops in combat? If that's not the case, then have a seat. Several people will be fired, and we will rework this until it comes to being the final solution or the proper shape when it comes to documentation and things of that nature. So there's very little leeway. But out here in these civilian streets, it's all about that bottom line. So they will throw you under a bus, and CISOs just don't have the proper weight in the situation. They're not necessarily part of the C-suite, even though there's a C in the name, which is really a misnomer. And kind of crazy to me. So before I go too much further, so please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're trying to get 500 subs, 1,000 by the end of the year. Leave us some feedback. We're in the top 10% of all podcasts, which is kind of crazy to me. But we don't have a lot of ratings and things of that nature. I think we're like sitting at like a 4.6 or 4.8 on Apple, which is great. However, that's not enough. There's like only like 5 reviews to give us a listener score on some of the bigger platforms, and then that leads to more subs, more people listening, more people tuning in. So our listener score is almost non-existent, even though we are up there with the big dogs, right? Like we up there with Joe Rogan, right? He's probably the top 1%. But that's within the 10%. We're up there, all right? But I digress. I think this is a very important conversation, especially for those who are seeking to get into cybersecurity, because a lot of people's end goal is being the CISO. Like they want to make it all the way to that position, because that's one of the highest positions within cybersecurity. And the misnomer is that it's in the C-suite, like you have a seat at the table, and that's absolutely not the case in most organizations. you're just the most senior slash cybersecurity person. Like if they have a CTO, then that would be the IT guy or gal. But if they don't, if they mesh it all together, then the CISO would be the cream of the crop, the top dog. But they have no say when it comes to money and things that those responsibilities that fall within the C-suite that ultimately make the decision whether we are safe and secure, we have the proper resources and things of that nature. And that's just a crying shame that it's like that. There's such things as BSOs. So like I talked to Roger White, Professor White, for the Ask a CISSP, and he is a BSO, right? So that's the person who is the cyber person who actually does have the ability to talk to the C-suite, right? The B being the business, so they are able to translate between the two. He works for a $1 trillion company, so he has a lot of weight in that regard. But that's few and far between. There's not a lot of BSOs out there. Like there's a couple that I follow on social media, and those are people who have some kind of like their top dog is cybersecurity, but they also have either a degree or like an MBA, or they're coming from a financial background, so they're able to do that translation between the two, I guess, powers, the technical side as well as the business and money side. But again, there's not many people who have that type of weight, who can have those type of discussions. Yet we're the ones who get punched in the face. They don't go after the CEO or the COO because they're not technical in quotation marks. They go after the most technical person being the CISO, but the CISO didn't have they have fiduciary responsibility, but they don't have the purse strings. They can't say we will spend money on X, we will spend money on Y. This is not in their wheelhouse, unfortunately. So I had a great conversation with Kane McGladrey a few weeks ago. It's titled "The Evolving Role of CISO." And amazing GRC tools and the proper use of AI in compliance. And it shamefully did not get as much traction or views as I believe it deserves. So I'm going to probably attach that one to this one as well. I got to get better at naming things. But that was the full gamut of our conversation. But he goes in detail about how CISOs are kind of just not wanting to be in that realm anymore. A lot of them are leaving. He's a CISO. He's called Field CISO for Hypergroup, which was a really cool company. Very well spoken, very good interview. But yeah, a lot of his peers are vacating. There's like, no, it's not worth it, unfortunately. And you really want those people to want to be in the arena, and that you want them to have a dog in the fight. Like you want them to be passionate about security. You want them to have all these things, and you're unable to gain that talent or retain that talent because of the current environment. Like SEC is eating them up. So
And it's and
yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead.
only a deterrent because you can't keep those quality people. It's because you have to fill the position and you fill it with less qualified people, and that's also going to be a problem, right? Like somebody that may not know how to handle certain things, right?
Right.
I'm not saying they're unqualified, right? But they just may not have the experience that you want there, and that's a problem, right?
Right, exactly. Like the more seasoned may see the writing on the wall, and then they bounce. And then you're taking people who are excited to get in the position because it probably pays very well, right? But then, yeah, like you're saying, they might not be the most qualified to be there, the most experienced to be there. So you're having, I think they call it a brain dump, when all of the talented people who have all the experience start to leave an industry. And then you have people who are in the pipeline, who may not be seasoned enough to take those positions over. Not to say that's what's currently happening, but that will happen in the near future, because they're really cracking down on CISOs. Like I used to do the Visa CISO thing for a company, and that has way less implications because you're a fractional CISO. Like you're only paying for time. I help you come in there. I help you with policy, programs. I help you to build things, set up tools, things of that nature. But I'm not your company. I'm just someone who's on the payroll basically. So there's many layers of separation between me and you, because CISOs are expensive. But now it might not just be the expense of having your own CISO. It might just be the absence of being able to find these people, because they're like, nah, I'll do something. Either I'll take a lower tier or I'm going to go to a different industry and do something different. And I think that's going to be a huge problem in the near future. So I'm not blaming the SEC for what they're doing, because it necessarily has to happen to companies, regulation and things of that nature. However, so you're targeting essentially a person who doesn't have the power to necessarily fix the things. They're just escaping in many of these situations. And we've seen it with Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. We've seen it with the person in this article that is currently still on trial. Yeah, they're getting beat up, and I feel bad because it was a goal of mine, but I've kind of slow rolled. I want to see how things play out, because not that I don't feel that I will be one day will be experienced enough, but again, the writing is on the wall. You don't have the power, yet you're the person getting the punishment, which just doesn't settle well with me. For the pay, right? It's 3 Ps. It's a very alliteration right here, right? Bars is what I'm spitting. So I like that being the goal to gain experience. I like that the pay pretty much is paying pretty well. The math is mathing in that regard. However, the persecution, another P that they're receiving, just doesn't match up to it. It doesn't make sense because they just don't have power.
And the companies are allowing it to happen. That's the thing. They're sitting there watching them take the fall when they know, like, hey, they talked to you, CEO, right? And you said, no, we're not going to spend money on that, right? But because they don't have proof of it, you're like, I guess it was this guy. Like, this is his responsibility, guy or gal, right? That's what's terrible about it.
Terrible. But yeah, definitely continue to tune in throughout the week. It's really good. All the weeks are really good. The past couple weeks have been outstanding when it comes to just topics that we picked. Just because things happen, right? So we talked about CDK with the car dealerships. We talked about the privacy policy that will probably get shot down or never come to fruition. All those things are kind of like in the mass media, pop culture, so to speak, because a lot of cybersecurity doesn't actually reach those peaks. But people are upset because they can't get a car service, they can't buy a car, things of that nature. So we kind of just hit it well in that regard. And the same thing with United Healthcare, right? That was kind of bubbling up, and that is between that and Mr. Cooper, those are our two most listened to episodes. And now the car dealership one, the 15,000 car dealerships being impacted by the CDK ransomware, or CDK being a target of ransomware, I should say, is now like the third most popular. So things that impact people are getting a lot of views. Go figure. So definitely continue to tune in for all that good stuff. Thursdays, like I said, Ask CSSP. That will be Roger White this week, Miguel Clark in the future. Both of those are already recorded. I just have to do the production, editing, things of that nature. And then Fridays, everything else, movies, books, games, all that good stuff. So hit up all the websites to go by our name. Hit me up in person at RY Security Guy. That's RY Security Guy. You can find me pretty much on every platform. And then you can find Chris and Daniel on LinkedIn. Stay safe. Stay secure.